I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know anything about the lymphatic system. I did hear of lymphedema
Yes.
before, but it sounds like the lymphatics has a lot to do with the immunity. Is that the general
Yeah.
idea?
That is a big part of the general idea. Um, Remember when I said the systems of the body were made up by teachers to teach you about the body? We divided the body up, right? But that would be kind of like saying, hey, I'm going to teach you about the arm, and once you know about the arm, you understand the arm completely. Well, the arm doesn't really work unless it's attached to the body, right? It can't chop an arm off and really study it in and of itself because there's a lot of stuff it gets from the body that, so we chop the body up in these things like the cardiovascular system and the muscular system and all that kind of stuff to understand it. But it's not like God said, I'm going to create the cardiovascular system and now I'm going to mix it with the respiratory system, right? God, Mother Nature, whatever you believe in, made this entire body that we're trying to understand. And we chop it up to make it more understandable. And the point I'm getting to here is the lymphatic system could very easily go with the cardiovascular system. Very easily. It could also very easily go with your immune system, your defense mechanisms, because it works with both. It really, really does. And so, and by the way, let's not forget it can go with the digestive system because you have lymphatic vessels that actually hook up to your small intestines to help get fat out of them into your body. So that's three different systems it could really be part of. But placing it with the immune system is not a bad place to place it. I agree. Because it is full of things like white blood cells that we think of as, foreign invader fighting cells. Yes. It's a good way to look at it. Yeah. So any other questions, by the way, before we get started? No, maybe not. Okay. So let's talk about this lymphatic system. Ms. Creo actually just kicked it off with that great question. I like to think of the lymphatic system as your bulk trash collector of your body. And the only thing I don't like about that analogy is I don't like to think that you actually have trash in your body. People are like, oh, I got toxins, toxins, toxins. These are normal occurring things in your body that you just don't want to build up. But any of you that get bulk trash service, you know that you can put out small stuff in your trash cans and they will take it away. But if you've got a couch, the regular trash service does not pick up your couch or the tree that you chop down, and you have to wait, and once a month they come along and they scoop up the really big stuff with a bulldozer and put it in the back of a really big vehicle and drive it away. And that's your bulk trash collection. And the reason I compare your lymphatic system to that is because your cardiovascular system, your heart, pumps blood out not really to the cells, but to your interstitial fluid. It pumps blood out to your tissue, the interstitial fluid that's around all your cells, and then your cells pick up what they need. Well, your cells also throw out waste they don't need, and your tiny little capillaries pick that stuff up and turn into veins and bigger veins and go back to your heart. Well, some stuff is too big to get back into the capillaries. It just will never get in the capillaries. It's too big. Some of that stuff is regular little bits of debris, certain proteins that are too big, things like that. Some of that stuff is foreign viruses and bacteria and things like that. And 10% of the blood that you pump, 10% of the blood that you pump does not come back to your heart via capillaries and veins. So, think about that for a second. That means if I take 10 buckets of water, 1 bucket of water does not come back through the cardiovascular system directly. And what happens is it gets picked up by the lymphatic system, which also has tubes and vessels, but they're much bigger. And it cleans up that junk along the way and that liquid, and then it dumps it back into the heart. So that 10% does get back to the heart, but it doesn't get back to the heart via the plumbing of the heart. It gets back to the heart via the plumbing of the lymphatic system and cleaned up along the way, and then dumped back into the system to recirculate. And this is why Ms. Ablos was extremely correct when she said without the lymphatic system, you would blow up like a balloon. Because what would happen is 10% of your blood volume, and you pump a lot of blood, would build up in your tissues, and in a matter of hours, you would get very, very inflated. And in a matter of days, you'd die. If you have a problem with your lymphatic system, you're in big trouble. So that's not to be morbid, but I'm just saying it's super important, because as Ms. Correa was also pointing out, the lymphatic system is also full of most of your defense mechanisms for your body. Most, not all. Again, we've chopped this up arbitrarily, so your integumentary system is your first line of defense. Your skin is, right? But your lymphatic system has loads of white blood cells in it, and it cleans up a lot of foreign stuff that gets into your body. And so it keeps you healthy. So that's kind of an overview of the lymphatic system. The other thing to let you know about the lymphatic system is we are all in the circulation game. We essentially stretch people so that more blood can get in there. Well, your lymphatic system is part of the circulation system too. And so massaging people helps to move their lymph along. And your lymphatic system is a low pressure system. It's a low pressure system. You have high pressure blood coming out into your body, but your lymphatic system is kind of fueled by one-way valves and really the pressure of the surrounding tissue to kind of slowly squeeze stuff back upstairs and dump it in your heart. And so it's a slow-moving system. And that's not a bad thing because it's cleaning up stuff as it goes, but it's a low-pressure system. And so kind of moving that along with massage tends to be very helpful. The other things that move lymph along very well are using your muscles. So walking, exercise, things like that tend to move lymph. And that's very good for your lymphatic system as well. Yeah? Questions, thoughts, comments so far? No? All right. Let's share a little slide presentation and talk about the exciting world of the lymphatic system. Oh. There we go. Okay. All right. So let's go up here. So super important to understand the lymphatic system. Super important. Super important, by the way, for a massage therapist to understanding many of the systems is to understand interstitial fluid. Again, I don't want you to think about tubing coming from your cardiovascular system that's directly plumbed into your cells. That's not how it works. It's not like the plumbing in your house where the water conveniently comes right up inside your house. Your cardiovascular system works more like there's a river outside and you have to go scoop up the water from the river outside and bring it into your house, if your house is the cell. So cells are bathed in interstitial fluid. You are a wet, spongy mass of cells inside a big bag. You really are. And your cardiovascular system pumps blood to all of those areas of your body where there are cells and floods those areas. It's like flood irrigation. It really is. And it kind of leaks out over all those areas, and your cells are more like flowers in a flower bed that you are watering. And they pick up nutrients that they need from the soil, but in this case, it's the interstitial fluid, which is just a fancy word for kind of the blood that's kind of hanging around the cells everywhere. So we care about this because the health of your interstitial fluid really tells us a lot about the health of your cells. Your cells can't eat something that's not there, and they look to the interstitial fluid that's right outside their door to get their nutrients in, and they throw their trash out into that interstitial fluid too. And essentially, your cardiovascular system pumps more blood in that interstitial fluid and picks up old blood from that interstitial fluid. So this is the reason you are spongy and wet inside. If you cut into somebody, they don't just bleed, they're wet everywhere. They're wet because they're full of interstitial fluid. If you don't have interstitial fluid around your cells, they die. They don't have circulation. So again, your cells are kind of like flowers in a flower bed, and you flood that flower bed with blood. And a big thing that we do in the massage world is to try to rub your tissue so interstitial fluid flows around there better, right? So that nothing's blocking interstitial fluid from going around your cells so they can get the nutrients they need to be healthy. Because again, in massage, in a real way, we don't actually fix people. And we're not legally allowed to claim we do, by the way. What we do is we try to get their body working optimally so it can fix itself. You know, I'm not rubbing your back to actually fix your back. I'm rubbing your back to get blood flow in there so you can fix your back. It's kind of cool. All right, so the lymphatic system collects interstitial fluid that didn't get picked up by the capillaries of the cardiovascular system. It then cleans that stuff up and dumps it back into the top of your heart. It really does. Dumps it back in the top of your heart at your superior vena cava, which is this big vein that's bringing all this blood from all over the body back into your heart, into the right atrium. Well, the lymphatic system eventually dumps into the right atrium too, through that vein, after it's cleaned all this up. So the main thing the lymphatic system does is it picks up extra interstitial fluid, so it doesn't build up, cleans it up and gets it back into the cardiovascular system. It also goes to the digestive tract and gets nutrients from there too that can't be picked up by your cardiovascular system as well. But in both cases, it's kind of picking up stuff too big to get into the tiny capillaries of your veins. Your lymphatic system is essentially made of lymph vessels, which are tubes, just like your cardiovascular system, but they're bigger. They're bigger than capillaries, so they're bigger. And lymph. And what is lymph? So essentially, by the way, your blood is not just blood. It's got a lot of water in it. Plasma, right? Anybody here donate plasma? You're donating kind of the water from your blood. Anyway, when this blood and plasma is inside your cardiovascular system, we call it blood. When it leaks out around the cells, that same blood we call interstitial fluid. When it gets picked up by a lymph vessel and now is inside the lymphatic system, we call it lymph. So essentially blood, interstitial fluid, and lymph are the same things in different locations. When my blood is pumping through my cardiovascular system, it's blood. Now it leaks out the end of capillaries into around the cells, and we call it interstitial fluid. Some of it gets picked back up by the cardiovascular system, we call it blood again. Some of it gets picked up by the lymphatic system, we call it lymph. So lymph really is the watery blood that's also interstitial fluid, that's also blood. It's all the same stuff. It's this liquid that's getting flowed around your body. So don't think of lymph necessarily as a whole new item. It's not. It's the interstitial fluid that's being picked up, and the interstitial fluid was blood. Make sense? I hope. No? Ms. Creel's like, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. What do you know what part doesn't make sense, Ms. Creel? Or it makes so little sense you can't even explain.
I'm so sorry. It's just okay. I guess that we'll just walk along with it.
Well, let me ask you some questions. Let me ask you some questions that'll help. Okay. Where does interstitial fluid come from?
No, that is the interstitial fluid. It comes from the intestines?
No.
Okay.
It comes from the heart. Like the heart pumps out blood in between your cells. And that
so the interstitial fluid comes from the heart.
Yeah, and all its arteries and things like that. So what's coming from what's flowing through the arteries and veins and stuff and your heart?
Okay, you say that, it skipped a bit.
Yeah, sorry. What's flowing through your veins and arteries and in your heart? Like what's that liquid in there called?
I thought it was blood.
It is blood. It is blood, and when it gets to the end of its trip, goes down to smaller and smaller arteries and finally leaks out a capillary and gets between the cells. Now the blood's between the cells. It's still blood, but we like to call it something new now.
Because it's doing the new action, is that why?
Or because some guy like me needed to name something so that you'd have to learn it in anatomy class. Honestly, I don't know why.
Oh, too far. Okay,
Yeah.
I get it now. That
It's-
makes sense.
Yeah, it's just like you could be driving on a street and then it changes into an avenue, but it's the same darn thing, but somebody just named it something different, or Thunderbird turns into cactus. It's the same road. So interstitial fluid is just blood that leaked out of capillaries. We don't call it blood anymore. We call it interstitial fluid because it's found between the cells. It means between the tissues, interstitial, between the tissues. And if it gets sucked back up by capillaries again, which is part of your cardiovascular system, we're like, oh, it's blood again. And if it gets sucked up by your lymphatic system, we call it lymph. It's the same stuff. Yeah. Yeah, cool. All right. Thank you for, by the way, helping me clarify that, because that's important. Okay. Boom. So here's the deal. Your lymphatic system is there to remove excess interstitial fluid. It's there to pick up extra fluid that's found in your interstitial system. Who can tell me what happens if you have what do we call it when you have excess interstitial fluid? What do we call excess interstitial fluid in an area? Ms. Hendrickson, please.
Is that edema?
Yes. And what's the simple word for edema?
Swelling.
Yes. You are swelling because there's too much darn liquid between your cells. That's all. It's just there's too much water and blood and plasma, whatever in there, and that's edema. And edema is swelling. Yeah. And the lymphatic system's main job is to get that out of there so you don't overswell, right? Some swelling is good when you've injured yourself, but the lymphatic system tries to keep that in check. And that's really one of the main things it does. That's what it does every day, all day long. But it also helps transport fats from your intestinal system and therefore fat-soluble vitamins. And it also helps protect the body through its defense mechanisms, because once it gets back, stuff gets back in the lymphatic system, it gets bathed in white blood cells and they clean it up really, really good. So it is part of your defense mechanism. Ms. Clayton, please.
So isn't that what happens when you get injured? Like a bunch of interstitial fluid goes down there, so it has more vitamins and things
Yes.
to help repair it.
Yes, that's exactly right. Your body, we believe, when you get injured, your body flushes the area with extra interstitial fluid, and that bathes it in more white blood cells and things that can clean up damaged tissue. It brings more vitamins and nutrients to that area to repair it. It also, the swelling tends to create pain, and it kind of splints it and keeps you from moving it, which is good because your body doesn't want you to move that area for a while. So all that stuff happens, yes. Swelling is a good thing within reason, but you wouldn't want it over your whole body. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
And let me just say something about edema, everybody, and or swelling. They're the same darn thing. Edema means swelling. When it's in one area, that's usually a local contraindication. I hit my elbow, it swells up. Can I still get a massage? Yes. Yes, Tapscott, you can. But don't rub the swollen area, right? When my whole body is swollen, that is a sign of systematic edema, swelling all over. And that might be a sign there's actually something wrong with my lymphatic system itself. And that is a much more serious concern, right? That is a big concern, and that's probably a general contraindication. Don't massage this person at all. The other thing I worry about too is if somebody has swelling of like an entire leg as opposed to another leg, uneven swelling. Now I realize my elbow is uneven swelling, but we knew it came from me hitting my elbow. I'm talking about like where one arm is swollen and the other one's not. That is a sign there's something seriously wrong with this side over here. And in legs especially, in legs when we see uneven swelling, there's something it could, doesn't necessarily mean, there's something it could mean that's life-threatening. What is that? What am I worried about when I see uneven swelling in a leg, Ms. Hendrickson?
Deep vein thrombosis.
Deep vein thrombosis, yes. And that literally, thrombosis means a scab. It's your thrombocytes. It's the things that make you scab. It means we think you might have a blood clot, a scab basically, deep in the deep veins of your leg, and we don't want to dislodge that. And one of the signs of that, again, it doesn't mean somebody definitely has it, but one of the signs of that is one leg's swollen and the other one's not. One leg's painful, the other one's not. One leg's hot, the other one's not. And you know me, Taps got super casual about everything. I'm like, massage them, don't worry about it. You'll notice I'm not casual about this, right? Because most stuff I'm casual about, it's like, you might bruise them, they're gonna live, no big deal. This, they might die. Deep vein thrombosis is something to be aware of, especially on pregnant clients. Also very overweight clients are more likely to produce these type of things. And so when you see uneven swelling, do think, and pain, especially all that kind of stuff, think this could be deep vein thrombosis. Not only don't massage their legs, I would send them to get checked out. Don't freak them out, but be like, this is something you should get checked out today, right? And I think this is almost the only thing I've mentioned this entire course that should be stopping your massage. Now, by the way, there's lots of other things that could legitimately stop your massage, but I'm kind of a rogue massage therapist, right? I'm like, rub it, it'll be okay. But this one can kill people. So you know that if I'm concerned, it's serious. So please don't forget DVT, deep vein thrombosis. Ms. Hendrickson, please.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to mention you also definite total contraindication for like scabies and stuff like that.
Oh, that's true. Sorry.
Yeah.
Because they're highly communicable and you could get them and things like that. That's true. I apologize. But by the way, though, how much do I care about scabies? Not that much. Why? Because is anybody going to die? No. People don't die from scabies. So sucks to be you. You got scabies from your client, but both of you are going to live, right? I just don't want to kill anybody. I love people, but I don't care if I bruise you a little bit, you'll heal. I don't care if it was, you know what I mean, that kind of stuff. I don't care if we both got scabies, it's okay, but I do care if I kill you. So DVT. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Moving right along. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. So, Ms. Carrillo, this next slide is for you because it speaks to what I just said about. It said that basically that once interstitial fluid gets into the lymphatic system, we call it lymph, right? But it's really the blood plasma, which is like blood water, from in between the tissues. And if you look at this slide, they call the interstitial fluid blood plasma. They mean blood. They mean blood and plasma, which came from your cardiovascular system. Got leaked out there, we started calling it interstitial fluid, but it's still blood plasma. That blood plasma interstitial fluid gets picked up by the lymphatic system, and we call it lymph. It's all blood plasma. It's all watery blood. Cool. And eventually, by the way, it'll get dumped back in the cardiovascular system, and we'll call it blood again. It's all the same stuff. It's all the same thing. So it's just depending on location. Here is a very simplistic picture of the lymphatic system. I say very simplistic because you have millions of more lymph vessels than they are showing. You have lymphatic vessels everywhere you have tissue. So these are just showing you the large lymphatic vessels. Do you see the gentleman in blue and green below the smaller character there? So let me explain to you why there's a picture of a gentleman there in blue and green. What they are trying to show you is the way your lymph flows back into your heart. And all of your lymph, by the way, goes back to the top of your right atrium eventually. But the right lymphatic duct up there, that duct, sorry, it's not a duct. The right lymphatic duct up there feeds all the lymph from that part in green there, from half your head, your right arm, and your right chest. Whereas the left side there picks up everything. And it's just the way your body's made. I don't know why. I honestly don't know why. But it picks up all the rest. Mr. Manzanares, you raised your hand, sir. Mr. Manzanares?
Sorry, it was an accident.
Oh, okay, cool. No, it's fine. Thank you, sir. Um, so your right lymphatic duct takes care of your right arm, right side of your head, right side of your chest, whereas your thoracic duct has lymph coming back from the entire body, your entire lower body, all that stuff. Both are going back to the same place. Both are dumping into what's called the superior vena cava, which is this giant vein bringing all the blood back from your body. Because by the time it's got back to up here, it's been cleaned up and it's ready to be dumped back in the heart. You see lots of other stuff in this picture, like the spleen and the intestines, and what they call Peyer's patches there, which are just patches of lymph nodes and things like that. And bone marrow included in this, because all this stuff has things to do with your defense mechanism, and so does your lymphatic system, so they tend to lump these together. Your tonsils are considered just to be basically like large lymph nodes. And the reason you see green little peas all over this person's body is those are lymph nodes. And lymph nodes are filtering areas for lymph that have lots of white blood cells in them. So it's kind of a cool system. Once interstitial fluid gets into a lymph vessel, we call it lymph, and it starts pumping along the lymph vessel very slowly. And it runs into these lymph nodes along the way, and you've got hundreds of them along the way. And each of those lymph nodes is full of lots of white blood cells. And they clean up any bad foreign bacteria, viruses, whatever, as it keeps pumping along. And you've got multiple lymph nodes, so if somehow something sneaks by one, it'll get caught by another. And you've got hundreds of them all over your body that are cleaning this lymph up on the way up to your heart. So it kind of goes through many, many filters on the way up to your heart. So by the time it gets back to your heart, it's golden. It's ready to be dumped back into the blood system. All the big particles are taken out of it. All the bad stuff's taken out of it. And this is very smart because you don't want to pump bacteria all around your body. So the lymphatic system helps clean that junk up before it puts it back into your system and dumps it back into your heart. Yeah? You have higher concentrations of lymph nodes at the folds of your body. Your book wants you to memorize stuff so that you can memorize where you have higher concentrations of lymph nodes, but you don't need to, because you have higher concentrations of lymph nodes at the folds of your body. So you can fold at your neck. When you go to the doctor, you know how they grab your throat, rub it right here? They're filling your lymph nodes. And then they're swollen. They go, you're sick. Well, I knew that. That's why I came to see you, but thank you. You have folds in your axillary region. You've got lots of lymph nodes there. Your inguinal region, kind of your swimsuit line here, you've got lots of lymph nodes there. You've actually got lots right in your stomach. That's where the Peyer patches are, and these are just patches of lots of lymph nodes and stuff hooked up to your intestines, but you have lots of lymph nodes here. But at all the folds of your body, you've got a higher concentration of lymph nodes. So it's not something you have to memorize. You just have to know that fact. They're everywhere, but you've got higher concentrations where you bend. By the way, everything I just shared with you there pretty much covers the entire lymphatic system. I mean, there's some little more detail, but that really catches the really most important highlights for a massage therapist. So this part's cool. And I'm going to stop sharing for a second. I don't know how to visually show this to you, but I'm going to try. Okay. How does your lymphatic system know when to pick up extra interstitial fluid? Like, how does it work? Well, your lymphatic vessels are these fairly large tubes, much larger than capillaries. It's all very tiny stuff, by the way, but microscopically speaking, they're much bigger than capillaries. And they're these closed tubes. They're like straws that are sealed off at the end. And they have little doorways on them to let fluid in, right? So if this coffee mug was a long tube going down here, and it had a little doorway on it, when the doorway opened up, it would let interstitial fluid in. And when the doorway closed, it would stop letting interstitial fluid in. Well, the way your lymphatic system works is it has these small microscopic threads on these doorways that are woven into your tissue. So what happens when your tissue swells? Like if my arm swells, it gets bigger, and that little thread gets pulled. And what happens is, as my arm swells, the thread gets pulled because the tissue is getting farther apart, and that opens the doors to the lymphatic system to start sucking up the extra water. And when the arm swelling goes back down, the string comes back down, the tissue gets smaller, and the door closes. So you really do have trap doors on your lymphatic system that have strings on them. It's not string, I know, but it has strings on them that are woven into your tissue. And just like that, if something blows up like a balloon, it pulls on those strings and opens up the trap doors. And your lymphatic system starts filling up with lymph. And when the swelling goes back down, the tissue contracts, the strings come back together, and the doors close. So it's a very kind of automatic kind of system. It's very, very clever. And that's how it works to pick up extra fluid. So swelling itself tends to encourage the lymphatic vessels to open up and pick up extra lymph. Mr. Overman, please.
So then when it comes to swelling, how is it, when you need swelling because of an injury, I'm just wondering how is it that the door isn't getting open?
It is actually, sir. So what's happening in those swelling situations, as far as I know, and I'm not an expert, but your lymphatic system is actually probably sucking up fluid faster than it ever has. What's happening is your body is dumping more fluid into that area than it ever does. So the swelling is coming because your body's like, there's an emergency, and it pumps extra fluid into that area. It opens up capillaries into that area because, by the way, all your veins and arteries can get bigger or smaller. And so your body opens up blood to that area, pumps it full of interstitial fluid. It swells a lot, and the lymphatic vessels do open up, and they start sucking up as much as they can, but they can't keep up. And this is very good because if you think about what is it really doing, it's rinsing out the area. It's flooding it with interstitial fluid, blood, and it's sucking up as quick as it can. It's creating a big loop in there and trying to keep lots of flow going, which is exactly what we do in massage, right? We try to increase your flow. So your body does that same thing. It goes, we got an injury here. We need to send lots of resources, but by the way, there might be lots of crap there too. So we're gonna be sucking up faster, dropping off faster. And so that's where the swelling comes from. It's that it's putting out more fluid than it can take up quickly. And it kind of wants to do that, right? But most definitely the lymphatic system is still collecting fluid. In fact, at a very high rate at that point. Good question. Really good question. All right. Here's a picture of a lymphatic vessel. Yes, Ms. Carrillo, please.
You're not presenting.
What? Oh,
You're not presenting.
I'm not presenting, yeah. Well, that would make a lot of sense. Let's try. I think I would know how to do this by now. All right. Here's a picture of a lymphatic vessel. It's very hard to see, but these hairs are kind of like what I talked about. They get pulled on to open up space inside the cell for fluid to get in here when it needs to get in here. What else is really important to recognize here is these are one-way valves. And you have this in your venous return too of your cardiovascular system, and you have it in your lymphatic system. One-way valves are there because gravity works against your lymphatic system. And so you got stuff down in your feet and it's coming up. We want it to go through a one-way valve so it doesn't come back down. Right? So even though I just shared this, I'm going to stop sharing again because this explains how lymphatic massage works. Now, I am no lymphatic massage expert. I don't pretend to be, but I can tell you exactly how the concept works. Okay? I want you to picture some guys standing on a ladder, right? There's 4 of us on a ladder. It's a really tall ladder, and the guy right above me, his feet's right above my head, and the guy below me, his head's below my feet. We're on this ladder, right? If we want to move up this ladder, should the guy on the bottom just start pushing us up? How effective will that be? It won't. We need the guy on top to move up. Then we need the second guy to go up higher, then the third guy to go up higher, then the fourth guy to go up higher. We need that guy up the top, though, to move first. And that's how we move lymph around a lymphatic vessel, because when we move it, by the way, 1 to 3 inches, you have one of these gates. And if I have lymph down here, I need to get it up here on top of this thing to have an empty space to get lymph into that new area. So strangely enough, if I'm trying to move lymph back up to your heart from, let's say, your foot, I wouldn't start at your foot. I'd start on the top part of your leg and get the lymph out of there, move it up higher. Then I go further down your leg and get that lymph up there. And then I get down here and I'm pushing the top guy of the ladder up, then the guy underneath him, then the guy underneath him, the guy underneath him. Then I go back to the top guy, push him up further, then the guy underneath him, because there's no point in trying to push the bottom guy when there's 14 valve areas filled in front of them. And so this is going to sound confusing, but if you think about it, it'll make a lot of sense. When we do lymphatic massage, we stroke proximally while moving distally. We stroke proximally towards the center of the body while moving distally. Because I've got to move this guy out of the way, then move this guy up, then move this guy up, move this guy up, move this guy. So I'm stroking towards my heart, but each stroke I'm doing further from my heart. And then I go back to top again. Get him out of the way, out of the way, out of the way, out of the way. So we tend to stroke proximally while moving distally. Then we go back up there again. Stroke proximally while moving distally. And I am horribly oversimplifying because there are 2-year programs on just lymphatic massage in Australia. I don't know if there's any here, but there are some amazing lymphatic massage stuff going on out there. But they're based on that concept, every last one of them. Every last one of them is based on moving lymph along and how do we best do that. And they're based on stroking proximally while moving distally. What makes them such long programs is learning where all the lymph vessels are, the exact right amount of touch, because lymphatic vessels tend to respond very well to light touch, believe it or not, not hard touch, very light touch. But they all work on this concept. And it's because of the one-way valves. So honestly, if you're going to know things about the lymphatic system, as a massage therapist, we've really just kind of outlined all of them, right? It's the bulk trash collector for your body. It picks up the 10% of interstitial fluid your heart doesn't pick up. It cleans that stuff up through lymph nodes on the way up to your body. You find most of those lymph nodes at the folds of your body. Those lymph nodes are full of white blood cells, and they clean up all the gunk in there. You've got one-way valves in the lymphatic system, which is why you need to empty out the top of it before you move down to empty that one out up to the next level. And so you're kind of moving stuff up a straw, but you can't start from the bottom. You got to empty the top of the straw, move it up to the next level. And all these one-way valves are every 1 to 3 inches. So sometimes it's very little movements to go down this section, go down this. And once you're done with that, you go back up here, because you're trying to move people up steps of a ladder, and you've got to start at the top there of the ladder. And that's that. And that's really, I'm not done, but my point is that really is kind of the lymphatic system in a nutshell. I mean, which I love. Mr. Overman, please.
When would lymphatic massage be recommended?
Well, so when somebody had a buildup of lymph in some area and you wanted to move it along. So you do recommend it for swelling. I've seen some amazing stuff done by people way more qualified than me, where people even had like gangrene and stuff in this Australian school, and they were curing it with lymphatic massage. They were able to increase the lymph flow enough to get rid of the infection and things like that. But it is usually done post-surgery for swelling. I have a student who, that's all she does is lymphatic massage on people that have received plastic surgery, actually, to help remove the lymph so that they don't have excessive swelling and therefore excessive scar tissue and things like that build up. That's very common. So that would be the most common scenarios that I can think of that you'd use it in. Yeah. Mr. Richards.
But don't they keep away from inflammation areas? Or
Yeah.
is that not the case in lymph massage?
It's not the case in lymphatic massage. And lymphatic massage is very light, very gentle. And you're trying to move lymph along, you are definitely not disrupting the tissue. The reason we don't want you to massage when somebody's swollen, right, is that the tissue's usually damaged in that area. But this is not like what you think. I mean, I'm telling you, I've seen lymphatic massage where they're tickling them. which is why you really want to know where the lymph vessels are, because you've got to be right on them as you're moving them. But it is not a deep massage. In fact, really deep work seems to, if anything, seems to have no effect on the lymphatic system. Really. Yeah. Cool. All right, everybody, this is a good place to take a break. I love that. Let me share this really quick. Okay. So this next part should not surprise you, and in a way, it's not that important. But if you think about it, the tiny little tubes, like in your cardiovascular system that we call capillaries, when a whole bunch of them come together like branches of a tree, they flow into a bigger tube. Those bigger tubes come together and go into bigger tubes, and those tubes go together and become bigger tubes, right? Your lymphatic system's the same way, right? These lymphatic vessels eventually merge into lymphatic trunks. Why are they called lymphatic trunks? Because whoever discovered them decided to call them that. But they're just bigger pipes. That's why I don't think it's important in the sense that, of course they do. That's how good plumbing is. Good plumbing, by the way, everybody, you start out with the big pipe from the source, and you split it off into smaller pipes. As it goes off, you split it off into smaller pipes as it goes off. It's the same thing. Same thing with your lymphatic system. They're just trying to show you that all these roots, all these tubes get bigger and bigger and bigger before they dump back in to my right atrium. Cool? That's it. We already said this. The right, and it's my right, it's the client's right, the right lymphatic duct picks up all the lymph from my right thoracic area and my right arm and my right head and dumps it into the right atrium. The thoracic duct, they call it, comes from this side. It picks up everything from my lower body, my left side of my head, it's huge, and it dumps also into the atrium, but it picks up 3/4 of my body. It's just the way your plumbing's done. Just the way your plumbing's done. Okay. They're trying to show you how the lymphatic system works here, and I actually really do like charts like this. So these are your capillaries down here, right, where blood is dropped off and then eventually picked back up from the interstitial fluid. And these are your lymphatic vessels woven into them. What I don't like about this picture, by the way, is your lymphatic vessels would actually be bigger than a lot of your capillaries. But here's a good smaller picture, which is showing how your capillaries leak blood out into between the cells. These are the cells, and becomes interstitial fluid. And there's always a lymphatic vessel there too to pick up extra interstitial fluid and carry it back to the heart as well. And here's a lymph node. Lymph nodes are really just filters full of white blood cells. White blood cells are your ass-kicking cells that clean up the bad guys in your system, quite literally, and keep you alive. Lymphokinesis, you'll probably never hear that term again unless you become a lymphatic specialist. Lymphokinesis is just the flow of lymph. It's always in one direction, or it better be, towards the heart. And there are multiple ways to move lymph. I already talked about these, but your muscles actually in action. Your muscles actually working helps to move lymph. You milking the muscles, squeezing them helps to move lymph. The pressure differential in the thoracic and abdominal cavities during breathing. So Ms. Savarino will love this. Deep breathing moves lymph. Deep breathing moves lymph because it creates a pressure differential, and your cardiovascular system works because of the pressure of your heart pushing out. But in many ways, your lymphatic system works from the suction coming back in. And so creating a pressure differential up in your chest kind of creates a sucking that helps to pull the lymph back up to your heart. So that's a big one. And of course, by the way, you've got muscle around all your lymphatic vessels that help to move the lymph along too slowly. Okay. In many ways, I'm having a hard time saying my next sentence because it depends on how you chop up the systems of the body. But in many ways, that's the lymphatic system. Your book starts to spill over into your immune system here. because the lymphatic system and the immune system work hand in hand. So your book really puts the immune system in with the lymphatic system and calls it the lymphatic system. There's nothing wrong with that. It's very hard to know where this stuff places, right? But you've got lymphatic organs that mainly help you with defense mechanisms, right? White blood cells are the ones I keep talking about. Your white blood cells are things like B cells and T cells, and these are special defense cells, and we'll talk about them in just a second, but they are special defense cells that look for foreign invaders and attack them. Then you've got other types of lymphatic organs that are the lymph nodes that store some of these cells along there, and something called MALT, mucosa-associated lymph node tissue, which are things like your tonsils and such. Tonsils are really just big lymph nodes, and they're in this area to help, your adenoids and your tonsils are in this area to help catch foreign invaders when they come in. And then you've got your spleen, and your spleen in many ways is like a giant lymph node. It's a giant blood filter. It's loaded with white blood cells. It also acts as kind of a backup blood reserve in your body. It's over here on the left-hand side of your body. You do not want to get stabbed in your spleen. It's all over. Your spleen's job is to dump lots of blood in your body if your blood pressure ever drops really low. So, I'm going to go over a few things here quickly, and then we're going to try something different today. Sorry, everybody, I'm just thinking about this. Okay. All right. So your red bone marrow produces red blood cells and white blood cells and platelets. We know red blood cells carry oxygen, much needed oxygen to all your cells. It carries away carbon dioxide. White blood cells fight infection. And platelets, everybody, are what allow you to form scabs and clotting. Platelets really do create a mesh, which is why you guys don't bleed out internally. I guarantee you've all had internal bleeding multiple times in your life, and you didn't even know it because the platelets came along and filled in that area and stopped you from bleeding internally. You've definitely seen this on the outside. Miss Clayton, took the high water pressure thing and blasted her fingers, and platelets came to form in that area and probably already started scabbing that area. So you've got kind of three kinds of things that are formed in there. Yeah. Okay. You've got B cells and T cells that help you fight off infection, and I hope I have a slide here because there is a difference between B cells and T cells. Bear with me. It's not so much about where they go, although, by the way, T cells go to your thymus to grow up and be mature ninja T cells, which is kind of cool. But let's see here. Hold on. It's not what I want. Not what I want. I usually have a slide on B cells and T cells. Bear with me. Sorry, everybody. Bear with me. Here we go. Okay. T cells are some of your first line of defense after your skin, and they recognize a foreign invader, and let's see, they recognize a foreign invader and they attack them. And what's kind of amazing about this is that your body learns to recognize foreign invaders just like you guys have learned people to avoid in your life, right? You might have thought they were good at first, but then you got to know them and you're like, no, I need to stay away from that person. And now when you see them at a distance, you know to get out of their way immediately or to do something about them immediately. Well, your cells can do the same thing. And your T cells can actually recognize foreign invaders and thus know to attack them quicker. And they really are learning cells. And you store you store a little bit, these cells actually store a little bit of past invaders on themselves so they can recognize them. It's a long story, but they essentially take a little mugshot of foreign invaders so that they can recognize them when they come in again. Because it's very hard for your body to know what's good and bad. It doesn't want to start attacking itself. That's an autoimmune disease, right? And so once it's actually found that something is dangerous, these cells will truly remember it. So the next time they see it, they don't wait to find out it's dangerous. They recognize it immediately and attack. And that's what's really significant. And this is why adults tend to get less sick than kids. When we say you have a cold, there's about 137 different viruses that create the common cold. And most of the adults in this room have had 125 of them. And you just don't get colds very much anymore because your T cells remember those viruses, and when they come around again, they wipe them out right away. But when you're a kid, you don't recognize all that stuff. And I don't know if you've noticed, but kids, they've got a runny nose every other week. And that's because they are starting to learn about what's in the environment. In fact, there's a lot to be said for exposing them to what's in the environment so they do learn. But that is the difference between children and adults. Sometimes much, much older adults, like really elderly people, they're actually fairly healthy and they don't ever seem to get sick. It's because they've caught everything on the planet already. And they really do have, as long as their immune system keeps working, they've got a memory of everything to avoid. And their body very rapidly responds to pathogens in the air. B cells are a little different. T cells actually recognize that there's a bad guy, and T cells go over there and try to fight the bad guy right away. B cells don't do that exactly. B cells look for bad guys, and when they find there's bad guys, they then ramp up your production of antibodies. So one of the ways to look at this, your T cells are always around, they're always ready for a fight, and if they recognize a bug shot, they go fight. B cells do something slightly different. It takes them a little longer to do this because they're not going to jump in the fight right away. They recognize a mug shot, but then they go and say, hey, let's raise an army. Let's go make more white blood cells to fight these guys. So they're responsible for rallying the troops. Your T cells are like the Marines. They recognize them, they storm the beaches, and they go to work. But we still need the army to come in afterwards. And the B cells say, let's start raising the army because it's a big battle going on and we're going to bring in reinforcements. But both are recognizing foreign invaders. And actually, it's a learning intelligence system that gets better and better the more you use it, which is why it's actually good when you get sick, really, because you usually learn from the experience and retain that knowledge, sometimes for a lifetime, and never get that again. Yeah? Okay. So here's what I want to try that's a little bit different. Some of you have talked to me about the massive amounts of homework in this class, and that's not stopping. That's not my good news, sorry. But the way it's distributed, I think we can do a little bit better. So normally tonight, I would give you an assignment, which I'm going to, of something to report back to us on, right, tomorrow for tomorrow's lymphatic discussion. And you'd have a little quiz tonight. So, and then the next day you've got this test on the lymphatic system too, right? What I'm going to do is release tonight's homework and tomorrow night's homework that pertains to lymphatic system. So the only thing that's due tomorrow is your presentation and a quiz, but if you want to start on the big test, you can, to kind of give you some time. And you've got about an hour of this class left to kind of digest all this stuff. So I'm going to say that again in different ways. You all will have an assignment tomorrow. This 10-sentence or less assignment, and by the way, I'm going to cut you off tomorrow if it goes over 10 sentences. Not because I'm upset that it goes over 10 sentences, but just so we move along. So I really will. If I count to 10 and you're still talking, I'm going to be like, thank you very much. Moving on. And if you can see, Miss Abelos, who's at the top of our thing here, will talk about the lymphatic system to give us an overview, which actually she's terribly good at. And then people underneath will talk about things within that lymphatic system. So she'll kind of create a structure for us of some sort, and then we will fill in those blanks by talking 10 sentences or less on each of these things within the lymphatic system. That's due tomorrow. Your quiz is due tomorrow, your 10-question quiz. But if you want to get ahead of things, or if you're trying to balance your life out, I'm also going to release tomorrow night's test too. It's not due. It's due in 2 days, not one. But I thought it would help you. You've got an hour left here. You can kind of look into some of this stuff. You can kind of decide how to manage your time a little bit. Does that make sense? I know that, and you're very kind, Ms. Everson. It's not really a big help. I'm like, you still have all this stuff to do. But I think it's a better way to approach it. Yes, hold on, release that right now. Yes, Mr. Singletary, talk to me.
Yes, that's very helpful because sometimes we might find time where we have an hour or two of free time that we could do the homework.
Right.
If we didn't know what the homework was.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you might be busting through the quiz and you're like, I'm just going to take the test, all that stuff. You're right. It allows you to manage your time a little bit better. We won't have systems of the body that much longer. And then this all gets kind of easier. And it's just muscles all the time. But yeah, I just thought it would give you a little bit of time management. I hope this helps. And by the way, for those of you who liked it the other way, it is the other way. You can just do your 10-sentence presentation and your quiz tonight and you're fine. But I opened up the test for the next day just in case. I'm looking to see if I opened it. I did. Just in case you want it. Yeah, okay. All right, cool. All right, so let's talk about your assignments really quickly. Miss Avalos, lymphatic system. Miss Carrillo, this is very appropriate. Interstitial fluid. Yeah, I don't even know what that stuff is. Why don't they just call it blood? Why don't they call it lymph? Anyway, we'll talk about that. Miss Clayton, lymph. By the way, if you have less than 10 sentences, that's okay. I'm not encouraging that. I'm just saying, I don't want you to feel like you got to count it out to the thing. You know, what we're trying to get is an elevator speech. What's lymph, right? Mr. Craven, lymph nodes. Yeah, those are kind of important. Miss Deng, the thymus gland. And what I'm curious about, Miss Deng, is why is it important in the lymphatic system? And I'll give you a clue. It's important because that's where your T cells go to grow up and be really good killers of foreign invaders. Mr. Mitruck, sorry. The spleen. I love the spleen. It's really cool. It's really cool. Mr. Bose, Peyer's patches. I hope I'm saying that right. I've always called it Peyer's patches. Miss Everson, red bone marrow. Stuff's kind of cool. Yeah. Mr. Godot, lymphatic capillaries, vessels, and trunks. Mr. Godot, that might sound like three things, but in my opinion, it's basically one thing. Lymphatic capillaries, vessels, and trunks. Miss Green, your right lymphatic duct and your thoracic duct. Those are two main ducts. Why are we making that distinction? What's important about them? I've talked about some of this stuff today, right? Miss Hendrickson, how do you move lymph? There's got to be like 5 good ways to move lymph. You got 10 sentences to explain it. Yeah. Mr. Jones, what are lymphocytes? What are they? I don't know. Kind of like websites where lymph goes? I don't know. Miss Lee, what is the main location of the lymph nodes? Lymph nodes can be found in certain parts of the body. Very simple way to remember this. But they can be found in certain places. They can be found everywhere, but we find whole bunches of them in certain places of the body. Where do I find big collections of lymph nodes in the body? That might just be a few sentences, Miss Lee. Mr. Lee, cisterna, and it's not chili, it's chyli. That's it. I had to think for a second, everybody. Cisterna chyli is the way it's pronounced. It sounds fancy, but it's really not. It's a thing in your abdominal area, Mr. Lee, and you can explain to us what that is. Mr. Ma, what are mucosa-associated lymphoid tissues, which they abbreviate as MALT? And there's certain organs in our body. I think you'll quickly see. Moving right along. Boom, boom. Mr. Manzanares, do I already have the spleen in there? Oh, you're getting it again. Spleen. Miss Osuna, tonsils. It's because these were the organs that make up the system. Mr. Overman, Peyer patches. Miss Pugh, the variform appendix, which I will give you a little clue is just your appendix. Miss Rader, this is really a fascinating one. It's not really fair to give it in 10 sentences or less, but it's resistance. How do we build resistance to things? How do we build specific and non-specific resistance to things, kind of like how does your immune system work. If you feel like you can't get it in 10 sentences or less, I feel your pain. Like that's kind of a big subject. You still got to do 10 sentences, but I understand. Mr. Richards, inflammation. And Ms. Savarino, T cells and B cells. What makes them different? What makes them the same? T cells and B cells, pretty cool thing to know about. Mr. Singletary, HIV and AIDS. So these are pathologies, by the way, of your immune system when your immune system goes wrong. And we definitely need to know the difference between HIV and AIDS, sir, for sure. Mr. Snell, what are allergies? Believe it or not, allergies have to do with your defense mechanism. Ms. Stevens, what is chronic fatigue syndrome? You guys will get clients with chronic fatigue syndrome. It's actually fairly common. Mr. Thornton, lymphedema. What is lymphedema? Big name, sounds exciting. I don't know. And Ms. Young, systemic lupus erythematosus. Yeah, good luck on that one. I think that's everybody. You have a quiz and a test that are open. You have this that's open. You've got 51 minutes that are open. And I'm going to stop right there because I think that's a good place to stop.